And hello, everyone, and welcome to the Copyright 2.0 Show, episode number 346. My name is Jonathan Bailey. I'm the site Plagiarism Today, which can be found at plagiarismtoday.com. And joining me is a new face to the Copyright 2.0 shows. Yes, I found someone crazy enough to attempt co-hosting this show with me. It's amazing. I'm as amazed as anyone. But I would like to introduce to the universe Evan Sheres, a potential budding attorney and copyright expert here to join us, and copyright intellectual property expert. I'll let him introduce himself. So, Evan, how are you doing?
I'm doing well today, and I am an attorney, not the potential attorney.
Well, I should have said potential practicing attorney. You're still. Oh, that's right. You are an attorney right now.
I am.
We're talking. I'm still confused because I know you said a lot's up in the air.
Yeah, I have been practicing for about a year. Although
and
it isn't.
Hasn't perfected it.
Sorry, it's all right. The one thing is that it's very important for listeners to note that what I do say on the podcast shouldn't be construed as legal advice. As one of my favorite Twitter lawyers that I follow states, if this was legal advice, you would receive a bill after I was done talking. So that's really important that everyone knows that it's not, in fact, legal advice. But otherwise, I'm really excited to be here. I love to talk copyright. I love to talk intellectual property, and I love to talk music. So, this is just kind of a perfect blend of that.
And I realized I missed the opportunity to introduce you as the guy who produced probably the best Everlong cover I have heard.
Oh. Well, thank you. It was okay.
It was actually really good. No, I mean, I've heard a lot of bad covers of that song, let's be honest. It's one of those songs that's gotten a lot of mistreatment, but you guys did a good job of it. Because when I pulled up your YouTube page and I saw that you had a cover by Everlong, I'm like, oh God, no, no. But no, actually, it was very good.
Thank you. There you go. And I'm excited to get into that new Foo Fighters album and try to cover a few of those. I'm excited about that.
Yeah. You covered Dave Grohl quite well, but you lack the hair. The hair, it's not there.
One of a kind.
No, it's indeed. It was interesting. He actually won. I remember this. Dave Grohl, when I was in high school, and this was like '98 or so, won the yearbook contest for musician with best hair.
Huh.
We all voted for Dave Grohl as the best hair of a musician at the time. I have no idea why that was in our yearbook my senior year in high school.
Well,
weird stuff.
You give it up to him. The rock and roll lifestyle can really take a toll on most people. And 20 years later, still got the same great hair. Hasn't lost it because he's done too much drugs or anything like that. Although actually we don't know if he has or has not. But hair still looks good. Still gets the rocket. Yeah,
he still looks good. He's still one of the hardest working men hardest working men or women in rock and roll that I know
Absolutely.
of. So yeah, still kicking butt and taking names. And like I said, I don't think the rock and roll lifestyle, if he's living it, has not sunk him yet.
Yep.
That's quite a feat. Like I said, 20 years later. It's hard to believe, but yes, it has been well over 20 years actually of Dave Grohl kicking butt and taking names. But still, but Evan, very very glad to have you on the show. To repeat,
we should get Dave on the show at this point. We're plugging him.
Yeah, no, we should get. I think we might be a little small time for Dave.
Right.
But no, glad to have you on the show. Glad to be talking copyright with you, and glad to and very very glad to have someone who actually knows what they're talking about. The first in the Copyright 2.0 show history, I think, to have someone who might actually have a clue what's going on in these cases. So, you want to jump in and talk a little bit of copyright news, get started, and knock these stories out? Do you have anything else you want to pitch or talk about? I mean, the first portion of the show is yours.
I could say some of our listeners can find me at Evan Sheres on Twitter.
That's EvanSheres for those who are listening to the audio only.
Sure. Yeah, and other than that, I'm excited to just jump into it. If you want, we can start with the GSP case.
You've got to get a site, man. You got to get a site because we got to pimp your site hardcore here.
Yeah,
we're supposed to do that.
I think self-promotion is something that is a skill I'm still learning. So I think I
you
still
call yourself a lawyer. I'm so disappointed.
I've yet to envision what I would want my own site with my face plastered all over it to quite look like, if I would ever want that at all. So you know, to be honest, Twitter is such a tool these days that it's so much easier to access the public using that other than a website, because it's just, you know, to me, it's just the greatest form of social media. You get to follow everyone in one place, and asking everyone to come to the Evan Sheres site, you know, is a little asking for a little much. So I'm happy to have a Twitter site for now.
That, and not many people are going to ask for legal advice on 140 characters either. So
Absolutely.
that kind of gets, that risk gets at least a little bit mitigated, right? Yeah. But then again, you know, sometimes it would be nice to write something longer than your average text message. But
Yeah, well, that's true.
But you know, that's what LinkedIn's for. But yeah, we got a lot of great copyright news. Like I said, we're covering about 2.5 weeks worth of news. I have been swamped with haunted house work. Longtime readers of Plagiarism, they know I put on a small charity haunted house every year, and the result of that is October just disappears. I have almost no idea what day it is. I think it's the it is the 22nd that we're recording this. We literally open in 1 week. So
Well, best of luck with that. And
I really don't like that I just said those words. Yeah, now I'm nervous, but yeah. So we've come a long way. We've got a lot done, but there's still a lot to do. There always is. It always feels like you're hopelessly behind on this type of project.
Yep. So why don't we jump? We can jump right into this GSU copyright ruling. I thought it's a pretty important case for fair use because it reversed a pretty bad decision, you know, structurally in terms of how they came to the decision. And
yeah, it's not often you see a federal court judge taken to school like this by the appellate court.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. You know, the fair use test has been a holistic, you know, overall approach for a long time, and the Supreme Court has made that clear on numerous occasions. And to make a decision on with kind of arithmetic in mind and factor 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and kind of, you know, putting a mathematical formula together isn't the approach.
And then to recap the case real fast, it centers around GSU, which is it's Georgia State, Georgia State University. Right. Okay, I got it right on first try. Like GSU,
a nonprofit educational institution, which has encouraged its professors to, I'm sure to the delight of their students,
but not to the delight of publishers.
No, take most of the material, you know, derived from, you know, everywhere from textbooks to articles, and put them together online, taking little excerpts of what exactly they would need, either a chapter or a percentage of the book, put it all together online and have it basically available for free for their students to access.
Yeah, and publishers themselves have kind of done this through what's known as course packs. And I feel really old talking about that because I was, like I said, in college in the late 90s, early 2000s, where we just got the dorms wired for high-speed internet at the time. That was like the woohoo moment for college. And now I'm like, whoa, this stuff was online? We used to get actually handed physical paper with this.
Yeah, I believe the case mentioned that out of like a few hundred course packs, only about 15 are done physically, and the rest are all online at GSU.
Yeah, wow, it's a whole new world. I feel like I should be on the magic carpet singing about it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so basically the school encourages professors, the administrators at the school encouraged its instructors to make these e-reserve course packs, and the publishers, all the major academic publishers from the looks of it, took issue with that, and they filed a lawsuit, and the district court judge, the district court judge ruled basically that all but 5 of, I believe there was 99 individual course packs that were at issue. It's the typical thing of, we've got more, but these are the 99 we're putting in the lawsuit. That's all we've got time for.
Mm-hmm.
Ruled all but 5 were fair uses. Just blanket, yeah, 94 of them are okay in my book. And like you said, there was a very flawed fair use opinion that the appeals court took the district court judge to task over.
Yes. So it's important to know that fair use is what we call an affirmative defense.
Yeah.
So it's a yes, but. which means that you have to find copyright infringement first, which in this case it's pretty clear cut. You can't reproduce a copyrighted work. That's the sole privilege of the copyright owner. So these publishers
Yeah.
own copyright in these individual books
Yeah.
or articles, and the university reproduced them by putting them online. And so that's kind of clear cut. The question then comes to fair use, which is, yes, I did it, but it's one of these uses that Congress saw fit to allow. So fair use, I'm sure most of your listeners know because it's a pretty common issue, comes down to four factors. The first one is the purpose and the character of the use. So
Right.
we'll get into, I guess, the details of each one. We'll go ahead and enumerate first. The second one is the nature of the work, which means is this a fictional, really creative work, or is this more of like an educational work? The third one would be the amount of the work used, which can be both a quantitative and qualitative analysis. So how much of it have I used, and what percentage, what does that percent mean to the work? Is it the most important from a qualitative perspective? And then finally, the fourth factor is the effect on the potential market for the item.
Mm-hmm.
So those are your four fair use factors. And in evaluating the case, the judge sort of just put them as equal and said, well, if this particular work, we got 3 out of 4.
Yeah, it was basically like a basketball score.
Yeah. 3 out of 4 in favor of the defendant, then this particular one will go towards the defendant, and you just cannot do that, and that's what the appeals court said. It's a very holistic approach, and the judge made that mistake not only in evaluating the factors against each other, but in the third factor did a very strange thing when evaluating the amount of the work used. She put together this mathematical formula where if it was either 10% from a quantitative perspective, or one chapter if it was a chaptered book, then if it was anything less than that, it was automatically fair use, which is you just can't do that.
No. And it's funny because, as was pointed out in this article, publishers have often used those kind of bright line rules, like 10% or 50 words or whatever, because it's convenient. But they've always set the bar so low, like literally I think 50 words actually is the publisher standard, that it probably actually is. But it basically made so ridiculously such a small amount that it almost certainly comes underneath the fair use threshold. But yeah, there are no bright line rules.
Absolutely.
It is completely based upon what the judge and or jury sees fit to call fair use. It's an individual case, and it's possible for two separate judges to be presented the exact same set of facts and come to very different conclusions, which is one of the problems with fair use sometimes.
Yep, and the appeals court does quote one of my favorite Supreme Court cases of all time, which is Harper and Row versus Nation Enterprises, which is when Gerald Ford, who wrote a memoir about Watergate and had his manuscript stolen before it was published, and this quote came out of that case, which is something called the heart of the work, which is that if you can take something that's quantitatively small but qualitatively very important, because he had a giant memoir and only a small part of it was about Watergate, but that was such an important part of the book, and everyone was waiting to see what he had to say about it and why he pardoned Nixon, that you cannot just say bright line that quantity is the only thing that matters. And so what the appeals court ended up saying is that, well, from a qualitative perspective, what you've taken is clearly of value to you because you took it, and because it's being used, and there's a licensing fee that can sometimes be paid for these works. And so that fourth factor ended up coming in, the effect of the use of the potential market, which is the licensing fees, which usually is extremely important and weighed very heavily in a copyright case, and it wasn't weighed heavily, and so that was a problem.
Yeah, and typically looking at the factors as you order them, as they're ordered in law, the first and the fourth typically are given more weight.
That's right.
In most cases, and yeah, so to definitely run it like a basketball score, which I still find hilarious. That sounds like something a sixth grader would have done, trying to analyze.
Yes.
They just learned about the concept of fair use and the four factors. Well, I've got 3 out of the 4 right here. I win.
Yes. It's not a playoff series.
No, this isn't how you fill your NCAA bracket. This isn't how it works. It was a very fascinating appeals court ruling, like I said, but it didn't necessarily come down completely on the publisher's side. They basically said, no, you got to send this back to the lower court. We need a new analysis on this, basically. They didn't say that the entire concept of the E-reserve was unlawful, which is what the publishers were secretly hoping for, I think.
Yeah, and the judge was pretty clear when she revisited the first factor, which is the purpose and the character of the use, because basically the education side, the defendants were saying that, you know, we're a nonprofit educational institution, and the district court judge, you know, really took that to heart, and the appeals court said, well, in a certain way you are correct about that. You're a nonprofit, you're educational, there are some permitted uses like this. Although they did make it quite clear that the use was not transformative, which is usually a big is that if you take, you know, stick figure Spider-Man and put him into a three-dimensional, beautiful work of art, you know, that's generally what's known as transformative, and they did not do that. But yet, despite that, the nonprofit and educational status of the use did help them. And
so, I mean, so by no means is this a slam dunk when it goes back to the district court with the publishers. They haven't won. They're not doing a victory lap like we're going to be talking about in a second with Aereo.
Well, you know, one of the final things I'd like to talk about with this case is another part that the appeals court reversed is the burden.
Yeah.
So on this fourth factor, which is usually extremely important, which once again is the effect of the potential marketplace for these, you know, chapters or parts of books, is that the district court judge said that it's up to the plaintiff to show that licenses were available for each individual part used, which is difficult to do because, you know, we're talking 5 or 6 years later now, and the district court ruled that it's actually the plaintiff's burden to show that, but because this is an affirmative defense, which means that the defendant, like I said before, is admitting to what they did, but they want to show that although they had done exactly what the plaintiff is alleging, here's why it's okay. Because they're bringing up this affirmative defense, it's actually their responsibility to show that no license was available. And we all know that proving a negative is not going to be easy for them.
In fact, you know, the old adage, you can't prove a negative, is sometimes true.
Yeah.
You can't prove I do not have a dinosaur in my closet right now.
Yes.
Of course, if I claim I have a dinosaur in my closet, you would be like, well, show me the dinosaur in the closet.
Yes.
And then that would be either I can demonstrate the dinosaur in the closet or I cannot. Now, one other thing that was reversed was the publishers were ordered to pay $3 million in legal fees to GSU, which seems kind of odd in and of itself because there were several cases in there, even the lower court ruled at least there was something to argue about. So it seemed like the lawsuit wasn't completely frivolous, even in the lower court eyes.
Right.
But still, the lower court ordered the publishers to pay $3 million. That has been reversed as well, so the publishers get their money back, so to speak.
Yeah. The funny thing about copyright cases is that they don't necessarily have to be frivolous in order for attorney's fees to be awarded. You know, it's really up to the court's discretion to award to the prevailing party fees, and so that's one of the reasons why copyright cases are sometimes taken up by practitioners, even if the you know, prevailing amount isn't, you know, sky high, because fees are awarded more liberally. So.
Yeah, especially when you're looking at like properly registered works. If you're the plaintiff suing over properly registered works, of course, attorney's fees are rolled into the damages.
Well, yeah. So
that's always a very nice position for an attorney to be in those cases. Is if you have a defendant with enough cash and a certain enough case, you pretty much are guaranteed your fees.
All right. Yeah.
But yeah, but speaking of appeals that did not go the way that someone was expecting, the Aereo case actually made its way back to the district court, and I think this is the tale of a judge who's just had enough. The judge is tired of seeing these
Well,
guys.
there's that, and it's not every day you get reversed by the Supreme Court. So
Yeah, humbled,
yes,
I think is the word that should be used. Humbled, a humbled judge in this case. Aereo, for those that were living in caves and not following any copyright news at all for the past 2 years now, Aereo was a TV streaming service that used a series of tiny little antennas, one per customer, to capture the over-the-air streaming television and then beaming television, then stream it to people over the internet and also do some DVR magic too. Long and short of it is, yeah, they claimed that since every antenna was owned by one customer, that it was not a public performance and therefore not an infringement. Broadcasters disagreed, sued. Battle went all the way to Supreme Court. Broadcasters won. Now we're back to the district court, which was overruled. And basically, the judge doesn't seem too thrilled to see Aereo back in the court again.
Well, they'll be back there anyways because this is the preliminary injunction.
Yeah.
So this is the hammer down time for the broadcasters. This is the victory lap for them.
Yeah.
And so they got what they wanted, and they got the public performance ruling. So it's time to go before a court and ask that we want the injunction now. We want the court to step in and get orders to stop Aereo from broadcasting. And so that was the hearing that occurred.
And the issue is the scope of said injunction. It seems pretty much certain there will be an injunction.
Yeah.
There's no way there couldn't be, but the scope of said injunction is at issue.
Right. I believe they didn't ask for a nationwide injunction when they first came before the court. It was only for the circuit, but I'm not sure about that. And now I believe they gunned for the nationwide injunction. And Aereo went for a final attempt at life, which was arguing that they were entitled to a compulsory licensing system, which the cable providers are entitled to. Basically, Section 111 of the Copyright Act allows cable providers to retransmit copyrighted works for a preset royalty fee, but the judge wasn't really having it.
Yeah, and a lot of that's because of the Ivy case, IVI for those playing along at home, in which it was ruled that streaming providers and internet-based providers could not be cable companies for that exact purpose, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's it basically feels like Aereo, by trying to sort of skirt around having to pay those royalties, ran itself into a corner. It's like it played the snake game and then just ran itself right into the wall. It's got nowhere to turn now, it seems.
Especially because I believe, as the article points out, regardless of whether they win or lose the cable argument, which I think they're likely to lose, their main financial backer is no longer backing them financially, and they're losing something like $1 million a month. So
I want a job where I can lose $1 million a month and not have anyone care. Where's that job for me? That sounds great. I can lose $1 million in a month. Just watch me. But yeah,
so could I.
Anyone could.
Ben.
I could just go to the Porsche dealer in Metairie here, not too far, and do it. But I mean, and it's interesting also. Aereo is trying to make an argument that the Supreme Court case only deals with the live transmission, not the pre-recorded DVR functionality, which seems like an interesting stretch as well.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't think they're the plaintiff to make any of these arguments right now.
No, I think the arguments are interesting, but I agree they are not the people to raise them.
Yeah, I don't see any valid argument getting bolstered by the fact that they are arguing it. The legal system is great, but sometimes a plaintiff runs out their welcome, and a judge can make a decision that may or may not be reversed, but know that maybe this company isn't going to make it to that reversal, and sometimes there's some equitable factors that come into it. And we're seeing the end of it.
Once you get hammered by the Supreme Court, you pretty much have an impossible hill to climb.
Correct.
Even if you have other arguments you might be able to make, the mere fact that you were a loser in the nation's highest land, the nation's highest court, makes you a target every time you go before a lower judge. And that's, I think, what's happening here. So, yeah, they're not going to be arguments from them are going to be treated with a double grain of salt now. Any argument from them. And as the judge asked in the oral arguments, how many bites at the apple does one get? Which Ario seems to think 4 or 5. I think at this point is where we're at.
Well, like any litigant, it's when your life depends on it, you're gonna take you're gonna take every bite you can.
It's spaghetti litigation. You take the spaghetti, you fling it against the wall, you see what sticks.
Yep.
And then if something sticks, that argument is the one you run with. That's where you go. That's your hope.
John, very insightful.
Well, it's eerily reminiscent in that regard of the lawsuit that's next, the New Girl lawsuit. Creators of a pilot that apparently went nowhere called Square One, which maybe I'm showing my age again. Wasn't Square One like a math TV program when I was a kid?
I think Square One was the script or the concept, and when you forwarded the story to me, it's actually the first time I had heard about it, and I was pretty shocked when I heard the story here. Because right away, the way it's framed seems like this plaintiff has a case. But that's merely from the point that she divorced her husband from finding out that she was being cheated on, and moved into a bachelor pad with 3 guys, which is New Girl, save for the marriage. I don't know if you've seen the show, but that's the exact premise of the show, is that she's dating someone for 6 years, and then finds out that she's been cheated on, and moves into the place with 3 guys. So even though that idea per se is not copyrightable, because you can't copyright an idea, and that's kind of broad enough that you can't really own that concept, something definitely smells fishy to me here, even though her initial claim was thrown out.
And that's the case. It may be more of a contract dispute than a copyright case. We see that a lot. In fact, we've been seeing that in other similar cases where instead of a copyright dispute, it is shifted and turned into a contract dispute, and actually in one case recently was moved to state court because it was such a contract dispute.
Right. I think with this case we'll have to wait to see, because the point of a complaint is to put the defendant on notice about your claim, so they can prepare an adequate answer and eventual defense. You don't have to outline exactly every point of law and that you plan to argue, and every fact. It has to be a general approach, and they made the mistake of saying that here I've got 4 or 5 scripts, and here's 30 or 40 different pieces of art that we find are infringing these 5 or 6. You can't do that. You have to be specific. I have to see, this is my one copyrighted item, and I believe all 30 of these are unauthorized derivative works of that one piece, and so she'll have to come back to do that.
You have to draw the lines from A to B, basically, is what you're saying. It has to be this became this, and that morphed. You have to be able to show the lineage. And
absolutely.
And basically the judge dismissed the claim against New Girl, saying, "Oh, it's too ambiguous," was the exact word. We've got all these scripts and all these things floating around here, and you're claiming concepts of this and concepts of that, and it doesn't. There's no, like I said, direct lineation from A to B here. Tell me where this is coming from. And that was the interesting thing here, is the judge did dismiss it, did throw it out, but granted the leave to amend the complaint, meaning they can come back with a more specific complaint.
Key word, without prejudice, which is fancy lawyer language for you can try again.
Yeah, it does not mean that judges are sometimes prejudiced.
Yeah.
They oftentimes are. Yeah. That has nothing to do with that type of prejudice. It just means they're free to try again.
Not the judge saying, you know what, I'm not feeling racist today, so I'll add this language to my decision.
I'm feeling downright liberal-minded today, so we're going to say without prejudice. Yeah, it's not that. It's that the whoever is the loser is free to refile and come back again. I'm
sure you remember the YouTube Viacom $1 case that was filed 6 or 7 years ago, where this point derives from, which is that Viacom was saying, look at all this infringing activity, and the judge is like, you can't do that. You have to show me specific videos, point them out individually to me, and then tell me why those are infringing. You can't just, spaghetti it.
And this is why, like in the Viacom case and the Group Shark case, and we also just mentioned it, dealing with the GSU case. Copyright holders, when they file their suits, even though they might know about thousands of infringing files or videos, will typically target only a small subset because they can control and show that lineage. Like the Jamie Thomas Rassett case, the file sharing cases, there were a lot more than the 15 or 40 or whatever files involved.
That's right.
There were hundreds or thousands. They didn't get themselves in the crosshairs, the RAAA, because they were sharing a couple dozen files. It was because they were sharing much more, but to show the lineage and the AB and to be able to make the proof, they pared it down to a more reasonable number of files to litigate over.
Yep.
And that's exactly what's happening in, like I said, the E-Reserve case and what's going to happen here, because you can't just simply, like I said, throw everything at the judge and hope that make them sort it out.
Yep. And, speaking of music, that brings us, I think, to
yeah,
one of the
Led
best bands
Zeppelin.
of all time.
Yeah, Led Zeppelin. How do you say that name? Zeppa, L-E-D, Zeppa. I have no idea. I don't know these fancy new band names. But Led Zeppelin is being sued over Stairway to Heaven, which it was actually a joke on the Copyright 2.0 show for years. Every time someone would sue over a song that became famous, and they would wait a little bit of time and say, well, at least they didn't sue over Stairway to Heaven, was the joke.
Right.
Thanks a lot, estate of the band Spirit, the lead singer of Spirit, for completely screwing up the joke and suing over Stairway to Heaven.
Well, to be fair, he is dead, and
yes.
It is his estate. So yes. I believe he didn't have any part of it.
No, but his estate did. I thought I said estate of, but yeah, the point remains. But basically, the allegation is that Spirit's 1968 song Tauru, that one I really don't know how to say. Tauru?
I believe Taurus?
Tauru. No, it doesn't have an S. Tauru?
Tauru?
I have no idea. But that song is an instrumental song.
Right.
That the iconic, everyone knows it. You can hear it just by the fact I mentioned the words Stairway to Heaven. It's playing in your head already. I guarantee you. You were born with this knowledge now. This intro to Stairway to Heaven is from that song. Which, of course, Stairway to Heaven is 1971. That should make some people who listen to this podcast feel very old. That's over 43 years ago.
Yeah. So do you think? I know it's a very gray area with musicians. I mean, I'm a musician myself, and the word inspiration comes out with a lot of musicians. A lot of musicians will be like, I was inspired by this song.
Yeah, we could ask Robin Thicke about this. There's some blurred lines in with him and Marvin Gaye.
Yeah. I listened to it, and they're close, but I don't personally think they're close enough. But this is going to be one of those areas where I think it's just going to divide people down the middle.
Yeah. And of course, there is evidence that the two bands crossed paths, because that's one of the issues you have with these types of lawsuits is, well, I never heard that song. What do you mean? No, there's proof that Spirit did open for Zeppelin. They toured. They played at some of the same festivals. They were friends, by all accounts. They knew one another. So that problem disappeared. We got that. But the reason we're talking about it today, and the reason the media got into a tizzy, is because the lawsuit survived the first challenge, and the first challenge has nothing to do with the copyright issue.
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing to do with copyright whatsoever. It's a jurisdictional question, which is kind of comical because they were sued in, I believe it was Pennsylvania, and the band members of Led Zeppelin were like, we're British citizens. We have nothing to do with Pennsylvania. We haven't been there in decades unless we were really stoned, which is possible. They're Led Zeppelin.
So the thing with jurisdiction is that in order for a court to assert personal jurisdiction over somebody, that person has to have minimum contacts, which is a term of art. State. Person is from a different state. Incident, you could have a contract. And here's one: you could have placed a product into the stream of commerce such that it reaches the foreign state. Whether music is enough for that, obviously they felt that it was. And so there's a few other ways to do that, and so this first challenge was survived, and this is reminds me of the Redskins, media misreporting debacle,
Yeah.
right? Because the trademark was canceled, and all of a sudden the media is like, oh, the patent of this. I'm like, no, it's not.
The copyright.
Or the copyright of this, or all of a sudden everyone could use the the Redskins trademark, and so it's one of these like misreporting, grab a headline, round one to, like, this has nothing to do with the case. So
Yeah. Well, I gotta get on the Redskins issue. At least it made for a good episode of South Park.
yes.
It did achieve that. I mean, got to give credit where credit's due.
Although personally, the Lord episode just was fabulous.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know if you saw that one.
No, I didn't yet. I got to go back and watch it. I'll have to make a note of.
It's all about the state of music creation today. I think you'll really like it.
Oh wait, I think I might have seen that one actually. Yeah. It also, I don't know if you've seen the Phineas and Ferb episode where they create a hit song. It's also pretty funny too.
I'll have to check it out.
And then, it's also the episode that released Gitchy Gitchy Goo upon the world for those who are interested in it. But so yeah, it seemed likely that this would survive the jurisdictional challenge but it's got to be kind of nerve-wracking for Led Zeppelin, because I'm pretty sure you could go anywhere in the world into a CD shop and find a copy of Led Zeppelin's music.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to survive that much longer. I think you've got a few major problems. First, this concept of latches, which is sitting on your right.
Yeah, I was about to ask you about that, but
and I did read this, that the timing of the lawsuit is interesting. Obviously, Wolf did not want to bring the lawsuit because he would have done it. I don't know a ton about why or why not he didn't, and maybe I haven't read something about that, but obviously it's his estate, so the family might be after some funds. And the timing is interesting because a recent Supreme Court decision in Petrel versus MGM.
Yeah, that's the Raging Bull case.
Right, which says basically said that 18 years is okay because there's no delay is too long when it comes to copyright infringement. So generally, the argument of latches is that you're sitting on your rights for too long, waiting for damages to rack up so you can make it big, and then you came in, and it's an equitable argument, which says it's not fair that you're asserting it now.
Now, in the MGM case, though, they did rule that the damages can only go back to the statute of limitations, which is 3 years.
Right, which is the same in this present case, but
I'd imagine this would be the same here, yeah.
Yeah, the same 3 years. So, fortunately for the plaintiff here is that when you're Led Zeppelin and your song is "Stairway to Heaven," there's always new money coming in for that song,
Oh yeah. Yeah, I should check my Spotify and see how many spins that's gotten, because that gives you at least an idea of the sales and interest in it. Continued sales and interest. But I'm sure.
Led Zeppelin. All right, here's a question: which one is their number one song in terms of that popular? You got that top 5. Do you think it's "Stairway to Heaven"?
Okay, did you accidentally mute your mic? I can't hear you right now.
You can't hear me.
Ah, there you go. You're back. Okay. Resume. Sorry.
And can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah, we just had a drop off. Okay, no big deal.
So I'm looking at Spotify right now. You know how they list songs by popularity. I'm looking at Led Zeppelin. What do you think's number 1?
Oh gosh, I would have guessed "Stairway to Heaven." Honestly.
You'd be correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So it is. I'm sure there's plenty of revenue coming in for that.
But yeah, it's one of the most iconic songs. I mean, even if you know nothing else about Led Zeppelin, you know "Stairway to Heaven."
Yeah. And I believe I emailed you about this. Is that when I heard the song for the first time, I didn't think "Stairway to Heaven." I'm actually a huge Oasis fan.
Oh.
There's a song called "The Master Plan," written by Noel Gallagher, and it is an identical first riff. And so I think it would be great if you could maybe compare the two after we break and put those two songs next to each other. I think most of the listeners would agree with me.
Yeah, that's one of the other issues that comes up with these music infringement cases. The idea of prior art keeps seeping into the issue, because so much of music is the same or recycled from previous songs. I mean, AC/DC has been using the same 3 chords for over 30 years. So.
Right. In order to get a copyright, it has to be not only sufficiently creative, which is a problem for three basic chords, but also original. It has to be your idea.
Yeah, and
John? John, I lost you. John?
I'm back. Okay, sorry about that. Evan, are you there? Hey, okay, we're back. Apparently, we just got dropped totally by Google Hangout, both of us.
Well, I guess they didn't want us to, talk about them in a few sessions.
Yeah, they knew what was coming up. They read my show notes, but they failed. We're back in. But yeah, okay. So, but as you were saying, that's part of the difficulty in dealing with music is that there's only so many chord structures, only so many sounds and tones and patterns that are, and many of them are very common. There's so much music out there. Proving something is both original and yours and was copied exactly enough to be copyright infringement is a pretty big challenge.
Right. The less creative what you create is, the scope of your copyright lessens sometimes, and the similarity required in order for a court to find liability, becomes greater the less original you are. That's generally the trend, but
Yeah.
with law, nothing is guaranteed. I do have to report that I have a new follower, so I don't know if that's because of the show, but at this pace, I have 2 new followers.
Oh.
At this pace, I will be a Twitter superstar.
In no time. All right. Well, hopefully more. And it's the old joke about the creativity, though, and copyrightability. It's the old joke about Skrillex suing a blender for copyright infringement.
Skrillex loves music, though.
Jokes like that about music. So shifting our focus internationally for moving to New Zealand, where Kim.com is now being ordered by a New Zealand court to reveal all of his assets. Now, Kim.com was, of course, the head of Mega Upload in January 2012. He was arrested and his site was shuttered in a joint New Zealand-United States police action. He's still currently facing extradition to the U.S. Why? Because it's taking forever. That's why. It's really the extent of it. Its next hearing, I think, is in like March or May of 2015. I really should look that one up. But in the meantime, the movie studios have filed a civil case against him in New Zealand, unable to wait any longer, I suspect, due to statute of limitations issues. They filed a civil suit, and even though the suit is technically being stayed while the criminal case pans out, they are still seeking some kind of a statement from him about the entirety of his assets, including those which are not covered by the various court orders freezing his assets in the criminal case. Because there's a fear that he may be divesting or getting rid of his assets ahead of a potential judgment against him.
Right. This involves a lot of international criminal and international finance laws. Obviously, Make a Video was extremely popular, so he was able to generate a lot of revenue, and so I'm sure over the past few years he's been, for lack of a better words, he's got his Saul to get rid of his money for him into the right areas, and so this order should delay that a little bit, but I'm sure, we're so many years into this that the movie studios are not going to end up seeing a lot of money out of it.
Oh, absolutely. I'm pretty sure of that too. Especially since he's like this request points out, he's been spending quite liberally. Founded a political party,
Mm-hmm.
founded a new company with Mega, founded another new company in terms of Bamboon, the music company. So he's been spending money that, and that's the whole thing, is everyone's like, I thought all of his assets were frozen. Well, apparently not all of them. He's able to get money from somewhere, and that's a concern. Now, what I found interesting about this judge's order, though, is in addition to asking him to turn over the affidavit outlining all of his assets, the appeals court here ordered him to pay the attorney's fees for the movie studios for making them file the appeal, making them defend the appeal, rather.
Yeah.
Yeah, that hurts. That's a sign that Kim.com star might have fallen just a little bit.
Yeah, well, he's always got Call of Duty, right?
Yeah, I don't know. He actually lost his #1 while he was in jail. So, how many people can make that claim? I was #1 in the world at Call of Duty until I went to prison.
Yeah. I don't have too much to say about him. I'm just excited for him to get out of the news. He's almost the martyr for the piracy justifying community because of how harshly he's been treated in terms of criminals. So it's so easy to exploit, the fact that he hasn't committed a violent crime and he's facing jail time. So people like to use that. And so I'm excited for this guy to get out of the news. He doesn't, he's old news for me, and he was at a time when maybe some of the more legally competitive services weren't out yet, and so I don't even think it would be as successful as it was now because of the availability of some legitimate options, which I'm excited about, and I try to use as much as possible.
Yeah.
And so.
And proof of that is in Mega. Mega has not done nearly as well as Mega Upload. It's done okay, but it's not the gangbuster success that Mega Upload was by any stretch of the imagination. So yeah, there's definitely proof of that. And I agree with you completely. It's interesting to me the martyrs for the radical pro-copyright reform movement tend to be people that are not very sympathetic, like Jamie Thomas Rassett, Kim.com, people that are very flawed martyrs, if you will. So it's a poor choice in idols, I think, in a way. I think there would be better people to mention. Well, also, it's new efforts to combat piracy. And if you think you've heard this song before, that's probably because you remember 2 years ago. But basically, Google has announced a 3-step plan to combat piracy via its search engine. First, it will tweak its algorithm further to demote sites that get a lot of copyright notices. That's exactly what it promised it would do in 2012, but it actually didn't work at all. Have any impact.
I think that tweaking your your algorithm. First of many, I'm sure. That tweaking your search engine algorithm. Man, this point is going to be a little less impactful after that verbal mistake. Basically, I feel like tweaking your search engine algorithm is a fabulous way to combat copyright infringement in 2007. So, no one finds it by search engine anymore. It's gone a little farther underground, and so I think that that war kind of happened already.
Yeah, and the MPAA's own study from 2013 found that I think only 19% of pirate site traffic is directed from search engines, and of that, only 10% is from generic terms, not people searching like the Pirate Bay One Direction or whatever.
Right.
I have no idea why you would search for One Direction on the Pirate Bay, by the way. That just sounds wrong on all fronts. There's like nothing right about that statement. But but that being said, the people that are finding pirated content via search engines might be people that could be motivated to use and be steered to legitimate alternatives. So they are kind of that target audience for these legitimate services. The second thing they're doing is speaking of directing toward legitimate services, they're creating advertisements for various search results. So when you search for, like, the report shows Lorde, but when you find that, you search for her, you will get an artist profile with photos and links to the Spotify and Rhapsody and all those. And I think that's a great idea.
I agree. This I like.
This I really like. I think that idea could really go places. And you've seen Google do similar things with other search queries. Like historically, if you search for a movie, they've oftentimes had like the IMDb entry presented in that format. Well, why not a link to the Netflix? Why not a link to the Hulu or wherever else it appears?
It does remind me of Netflix. You liked Family Guy. Try Futurama. This is, you want piracy. Try free and legitimate,
Try Spotify, you jerk. It's
yeah. $9 a month for all of music. It's not a horrible deal.
That's one of the things I've gotten to my point is how horrible of a human being do you have to be a United States citizen pirating music in 2014?
I unfortunately still know a lot of pirators who don't like to talk to me because they know I'm an IP lawyer, even though they're friends, and I talk to them all the time. I'm like, it's available for free. Like, you're literally giving money to somebody in a dark corner instead of giving money to the artist, and they're both free for you. You can listen to Spotify for free.
And Spotify is so well organized. I think the reason Groove Shark is in trouble isn't just because legally it's getting buried. Legally, it's more underground right now than the subway system, but it's also the fact that Spotify just has a better interface and is flat out kicking its butt on UI and accessibility and all that wonderful ooey gooey stuff. I searched for something in Groove Shark on a lark. I searched like Metallica Until It Sleeps or something like that, and you got 80,000 tracks. Half of them are these stupid remixes that nobody wants.
Yeah, I'm with you. Spotify's fantastic. One of the announcements that they made, I think, it's gonna receive a lot of unfair criticism because this is one of these headlines that some in the online community like to exploit, which is this concept of sites that receive many complaints will be reduced in the search results, right? And that's an easy headline because, like, oh, what if the complaints are invalid or illegitimate? Personally, I think I have faith in the people at Google. They rarely ever get anything wrong. I'm sure there is, a built-in protection system for, false complaints. And I also have faith in the law of averages, and that as a whole, a site that gets many, many, many more complaints, will be an illegitimate site, and when the exception happens, there will be ways to, counter that.
And the scale of complaints we're talking about is, to most people, unfathomable.
Yes.
We're talking not a couple of complaints. We're not talking a few dozen complaints. We're not talking a few hundred complaints.
We're talking 6, 7, and 8 figures.
We're talking, astronomical numbers here in terms of the figures. If a site gets millions or even tens of thousands of false copyright complaints, there is something seriously wrong with the universe, okay? You can't, I think if you sent 10,000 false copyright complaints to Google about a single site, even Google would know this, without a doubt. The level we're talking about here is just off the charts. Look at the Google Transparency Report. You find that sites at the top of it have millions of complaints against them. And that's the range we're talking about. We're not talking, a dozen complaints here or there.
Right.
It's no. You've got to hit those astronomical numbers. There's no way you're going to. There's no way you, as a black hat SEO type, are going to blam someone out of the search engines by DMCAing them falsely clean off the map. That is never going to happen. And the flip side of it is I'm never going to be able to legitimately blam a site out of the search engines by following a few legitimate ones either. It's going to be the really bad actors that get bit by this.
It's going to be, the meta. It's a free market algorithm system. Is that hopefully the illegitimate sites will go towards the bottom as content owners enforce their rights, and the legitimate will rise to the top, and so hopefully we'll see more of that as the system is implemented.
Yeah, and then the third part of it, for those who are still following along, is that they're going to alter the autocorrect function. I'm not sure I understand this, but the search terms that get a lot of copyright complaints will be removed from autocorrect. And I think that was also a promise from 2012 that didn't come to fruition. In fact, didn't they recently have the search engine for the Pirate Bay with autocomplete?
I think when you say autocorrect, you mean the autofill?
Autofill, sorry. I keep saying autocorrect because I'm an iPhone user and I hate autocorrect.
So am I.
The autocomplete is what they call the other autocomplete, not autocorrect.
Yeah,
It would be nice if they could alter my autocorrect too. I'd appreciate that. I'd never say ducking.
Autocorrect. Yeah, exactly. We're thinking the same thing there. The ducking joke.
I've never once in my life said the word ducking other than autocorrect. But yeah, so those are the three things Google is promising. And it's the deal of Google's kind of been a dubious ally in a lot of ways, and it was funny because they mentioned the report, the follow the money approach to combating piracy. I agree, that's the best approach. It's just kind of weird that last year Google was the second most popular advertiser on pirate sites, and they're the ones promoting the follow the money approach. A little uncomfortable there.
A little talking on both sides.
Exactly. It's interesting. Well, final story this week. Both HBO and CBS announced they will be offering online-only streaming service. Actually, ESPN did too.
Hallelujah.
Praise be HBO. Praise be HBO Go.
As a recent cord cutter, because I just wasn't using it, who loves HBO, I am excited to be able to pick and choose my.
I am an accidental reverse cord cutter. We had the cord reinstalled. I'd been without cable for 7 years.
Wow.
And someone moved into our home, and she brought cable, or I should say satellite, with her. So we have it again, but it was not necessarily my decision, if you will. I'd be perfectly fine without it. But yeah, I get what the cord cutters are saying on that one.
Yeah, I'm a huge NHL fan, and I've got my game center, and you got to hand it to the NHL way ahead of the curve, even though the system isn't perfect. It's been available online for a few years, so that was my number one consumption. So I just got the centerized package online. I watch all my games. The second one is that I tend to binge watch various shows. So why do I have cable if there's Netflix? And then the last one was I love to get my Game of Thrones, and my other HBO shows right when it happens. So that was the piece of the puzzle that I wanted,
Now here's my question. The CBS one, HBO Go has not announced its price for the online-only version. They just said it's coming. They said they're definitely going to do it. They haven't given the terms or the pricing or anything.
It's not going to be cheap.
Not going to be cheap, no. But CBS said that theirs will be $6 per month. Can you see yourself paying $6 a month for streaming access to CBS plus on-demand access? Is that something you can see happening for a single channel?
Especially like a broadcast channel that's generally free over the years. I'm a fan of the network, but I don't think so. But that's just my opinion. I can't really.
I can't either, because I thought people were crazy to pay $10 for Aereo. When an antenna and a DVR, I could do the same thing in my house.
Right.
But
Well, be careful now, because now you're making the argument for why Aereo is a private performance, which is essentially their argument, which is that all they're doing is providing a service for
No,
those who do it themselves.
no, they were arguing they were leasing the hardware,
Right.
not providing a service. They were arguing kind of the opposite.
Correct.
We're not a service provider. We're merely leasing the equipment. Basically was their argument, but of course that's not functionally true. But yeah, so that was what Aereo was pitching. But yeah, it seemed crazy to me to pay $10 a month for that.
Yeah.
But then again, that's once again just me. I'm not a big broadcast television watcher.
I think HBO is making the right move. Again, I think it's a few years late. I think it's like more than a few years late. I think it's 4 or 5 years late. Maybe they finally learned their lesson when they got that whole most pirated show is Game of Thrones, and that was
that's like the most. It's like religiously on Torrent Freak every week, and the most pirated show of the week is here's a surprise, it's Game of Thrones again. Congratulations. HBO.
Right, and that comment is taken so out of context that it's. But anyways, when you're the most pirated, when your content is the most pirated on television, you look at your revenue stream and you figure out, well, hey, that's lost revenue. Our revenue is down the drain.
And that's the thing about piracy is no amount of making available legitimately is going to eliminate piracy by itself. And we've seen that with the music industry. We talked about Spotify and how big of a jerk do you have to be to pirate music in 2014 in the United States. It doesn't make sense. But people still do it. And it frustrates me. Because like you said, they're just throwing money at nefarious, shady people and not giving at least the pennies to those artists and the people making it legitimately.
Yeah.
But the flip side of the coin is when you are being pirated excessively, like to an extreme, there is an indication that there is an untapped market there.
Yep.
That there may be some outreach you can do. There's the normal level, and then there's the Game of Thrones level of piracy, and HBO was always head and shoulders above everyone else in the being pirated category.
Right. AMC does a little bit. I was able to watch the latest Walking Dead for free after it, although I don't think I've been able to watch episode 2 yet. So if you're watching, please get on that, AMC. But yeah, HBO has finally done the right thing, and I think their service is going to be immensely successful as long as it's got the basics of what is tangible in terms of price, timing of when you're the show. I don't think people are going to want to wait a week to watch the most recent Game of Thrones. I think that's not going to be effective. I think you have to have it same time. If someone's paying for HBO, they're paying for HBO, so they should have all the same services.
Yeah, and they should treat it like it's an HBO subscription without the cable, basically.
Agreed.
What you're saying. And I'm going to be very interested to see what the price is going to be and how people react to the price. Because it's not going to be $6 a month. I'm pretty confident on that one.
Well, I think you're looking at probably $15 a month, something like that.
Yeah, I would say 15. I was going to say I'm torn between like the $14.95 or the $19.95 range. It's going to be one of those zones there. Where I'm thinking.
As long as I've got. As long as my head's above water, it's going to be a Futurama Fry, shut up and take my money situation.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's going to be true for a lot of people, because not just like the original series, but also the movies and everything else that HBO offers.
Yeah, Vice is just incredible.
I think HBO Go, without the need for a cable subscription, has a chance to be a legitimate Netflix competitor. And that's what a lot of people have been saying, is that Netflix is the one that should be most scared right now. And I agree with that. I think there's a potentially new big shark in the water. Well, yeah. That's all the copyright news I got. Do you have any final thoughts, any final stories?
I don't. I think it was a pleasure to talk copyright with you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. And I think this went rather well.
I agree with you. Other than the twerking incident.
The unfortunate twerking incident that took place.
Yes, Twerkgate 2014.
Oh God! You think don't throw anything else twerking related. You might accidentally title the episode for me.
Oh no.
But yeah, no, it all happens, and it's all good. Well, on that note, my name is Jonathan Bailey. I am from the site Plagiarism Today, which can be found at plagiarismtoday.com. I forgot how to do the outro. You can find me on social media at username Plagiarism Today. That's Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, anywhere you care to find me. And Evan, you are?
My name is Evan Sheres, copyright and trademark attorney. And you can find me on Twitter at Evan Sheres if you want to follow me for some legal commentary and other social media use, I guess.
And also check out his YouTube if you run across it. I forgot what your YouTube name is.
I am a
light YouTuber, but it's an awesome one nonetheless.
I am a singer-songwriter in my spare time, so if you want to listen to some original music as well as some covers, I've got that online. So.
Well, on that note, everyone, thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you guys next week.